Hello everyone. Today I want to share with everyone a very heartbreaking story. When they called me a worthless burden all this time, I always tried to support them, especially paying their mortgage. This story really shocked and saddened me. When Olivia sent me the video, I expected it to be another family gathering, something mundane. Maybe my parents reminiscing about the past. But as soon as I pressed play, my entire world tilted on its axis. There they were, my mother, my father, and my brother Alex, sitting around the kitchen table in the house I had secretly saved from foreclosure. The same house where I had grown up, where birthdays and holidays were once filled with laughter. The Arizona sun filtered through the windows, casting a warm, deceptive glow over their conversation. It felt almost cruel how the golden light bathed their faces in false warmth while their words sent a chill down my spine. Emily only helps because she owes us. My mother's voice rang through the speaker, dripping with casual cruelty. I stiffened, barely breathing as I listened. Yeah, Alex scoffed. And she acts like she's doing us some huge favor. What a joke. Then came the final blow. My father, the man who had once held my hand as I learned to ride a bike. The man I had spent years trying to make proud, nodded in quiet agreement. No defense, no hesitation, just silent approval of the way they spoke about me like I was nothing more than an ATM with a heartbeat. I rewound the video, once, twice, a third time, each replay carved deeper into the space where my love for them used to be. How long had they been saying things like this behind my back? How many times had they laughed about me while I sent thousands of dollars their way every month? A second message popped up from Olivia. You needed to see this. Emily, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. They've been talking like this for months. My hands were shaking now. But not with sadness, not with grief, with clarity, cold, sharp clarity. I turned to my laptop and pulled up my financial records. $230. That was the amount I had paid toward their mortgage under the name of Horizon Investments LLC. The business I had set up to save them from losing their home. Every month, they made a small payment, believing they were dealing with a bank, while I covered the rest. They had never bothered to read the fine print. They had no idea that I, the burden, the joke, was the reason they still had a roof over their heads. I inhaled sharply, gripping the desk as a strange calm settled over me. They had no idea who they were mocking, but they were about to find out. Reaching for my phone, I typed a response to Olivia. Thank you for showing me the truth. Don't worry, I won't tell them it was you. But things are about to change. For years, I had been their safety net, their silent benefactor, their secret source of stability. But no more. For the first time, I was going to let them fall. The rage in my chest burned slow, steady, like a fire just waiting for the right moment to consume everything. As I sat at my desk, staring at the mortgage documents I had signed 4 years ago, I realized the truth. I was the only reason my family still had a home. And they never even knew it. 4 years ago, my parents were drowning, the housing market had collapsed, and my brother Alex had run my father's business into the ground. They were weeks away from foreclosure, their panic barely concealed beneath thinly veiled pleas for help. But their pride wouldn't allow them to ask me outright. Instead, they made backhanded comments about family supporting family, and how a good daughter wouldn't just watch her parents lose everything. I had just been promoted at my tech firm, and despite years of being dismissed as the unimportant one, I couldn't bear to watch them fall apart. So, I found another way. With the help of my financial advisor, I set up Horizon Investments LLC and quietly bought the house from the bank. On paper, my parents were still the owners, still making their monthly payments. But in reality, I was covering the bulk of it, over $5 every month, while they contributed a fraction. Believing they were still barely hanging on. They had no idea that their daughter, the same one they belittled and mocked, was the only reason they weren't out on the streets. And yet, they sat at that kitchen table, laughing about me, calling me a burden. I pulled up the financial statements, my fingers tightening around the mouse as I did the math. $267.843. That was how much I had given them over the years. Nearly a third of my total earnings. All while they plotted behind my back, discussing how they could squeeze more out of me. I should have felt pain. I should have cried. But instead, I smiled. Because they had no idea what was coming. I picked up my phone and dialed Kate, my financial advisor. The moment she answered, I skipped the small talk. Remember the purchase clause we added when I bought my parents' house? There was a brief pause before she replied. Of course. If they miss a payment, you can claim full ownership and turn them into tenants immediately. I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of that reality settle in. They had no idea I was their landlord. They had no idea that the next time they forgot to read the fine print, it would cost them everything. They have a payment due in 9 days. I said finally, and for the first time since this all started, I'm not going to cover it. Kate was silent for a moment, then simply said, understood. I ended the call and stared out my window, heart pounding with a mix of anger, relief, and something else, something cold and final. They wanted to see me as an ATM? Fine. Then they could learn what happens when the ATM closes its doors for good. Later that night, I sat in my dimly lit apartment, staring at my laptop screen. The evidence was all there, staring back at me, every lie, every deception, every ounce of betrayal. My hands hovered over the keyboard as I reread the messages my uncle had sent. A secret family group chat. A thread dedicated entirely to discussing me. Lena thinks she's so special with her tech job. Alex had written, his words dripping with disdain. She barely helps with the mortgage while I'm here every day running Dad's business. The bile rose in my throat. Help? I had done more than help, I had saved them. And they had no idea. But my mother's words cut the deepest. We should ask her for more money. She's single with no kids. What else does she spend it on? After all we sacrificed to raise her, she can't even properly support her family. I clenched my fists. Sacrifice? I had spent years of my life carrying the weight of their financial irresponsibility. I had covered their mortgage payments, month after month, all while they dined at expensive restaurants, took weekend getaways, and continued to live a life of comfort, all on my dime. I opened my financial records, my pulse hammering in my ears. $267.843. That was the total amount I had contributed over the past 4 years. Meanwhile, my family, the people who claimed I had done nothing for them, had only paid a fraction of that. They had no idea that I was their landlord. My phone buzzed. Sweetie, could you come to dinner this Sunday? We need to discuss something important. I almost laughed. Of course, they were planning to manipulate me. Just like always, probably with my mother's teary-eyed speeches and my father's quiet, patronizing authority, and Alex, sitting smugly, thinking he had it all figured out. Not this time. I picked up the phone and dialed Kate, my financial advisor. She answered on the second ring. I need to know my options with the purchase agreement, I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. There was a pause. Then, in a voice that held the weight of unspoken understanding, she said, I had a feeling you might. Remember that clause we included? If they miss a payment, Divine Investments can exercise its purchase option immediately. The house would be yours outright, and they'd become month-to-month tenants. I let out a slow breath. So it was that simple. And if they don't pay rent? Kate hesitated. Standard eviction laws would apply. You'd be within your rights to give them notice. I leaned back in my chair, my heart pounding with adrenaline. Then let's prepare for every possibility, I said. I stared at the screen, my family's words burning into my mind. They thought they had me backed into a corner. But they were about to learn who really held the power. Sunday arrived, and with it, a storm of emotions I had buried for too long. I pulled up to my family's house, the house they thought was still theirs, and took a deep breath. The setting sun bathed the Phoenix sky in hues of burnt orange. A striking contrast to the cold game of manipulation waiting inside. I stepped through the front door, the familiar scent of my mother's lasagna filling the air. It was intentional, of course. A calculated move to remind me of childhood comfort, to soften me before they made their demands. Lena, sweetheart. My mother's voice was overly bright as she pulled me into a hug. Her designer bracelet glinting under the light. I noticed it was new. How much of my money had paid for it? I smiled, matching their performance. It's good to see you all. Alex was already seated at the dining table, dressed in business casual as if he were the one holding all the power here. He smirked at me, oblivious to what I knew. My father stood by, his expression unreadable, his reading glasses perched on his nose as he casually thumbed through some bank statements. It was all so predictable. We sat down, and my mother wasted no time. Before we eat, she began, glancing at my father, who nodded in agreement. We wanted to talk about something important. Here it comes. I took a slow bite of lasagna, making them wait. Of course. What's on your mind? Alex cleared his throat. Well, as you know, Dad's business has been struggling. Not surprising, since you ran it into the ground. I thought. We've been thinking, my mother continued, her voice soft, calculated, about how lucky we are to have such a successful daughter. She reached across the table, giving my hand a gentle squeeze. We sacrificed so much to give you a good education. There it was, the guilt card. The mortgage has become a bit of a burden, my father added, his voice carrying that authoritative weight that once made me feel small. And since you're doing so well in your career, we thought you might be able to help, just a little more. I swallowed my food, hiding the smirk that threatened to break through. How much are you thinking? An extra $2 a month. My mother said quickly. It's not much, considering your salary. $2,000, on top of the $5,000 I had already been secretly paying. The audacity was almost impressive. I took another slow bite, keeping my expression neutral. I'll think about it, I said at last. Times are a bit uncertain right now. Alex scoffed. Uncertain? Please, we all know you're doing fine. Unlike some of us who are actually working hard to keep this family together. I smiled. You have no idea how uncertain your future really is. Alex. Sometimes, I said, setting my fork down, people get exactly what they deserve. I excused myself after dinner, heading down the hallway under the guise of needing the bathroom. But my true destination was my father's study. The door was slightly ajar. And inside, voices whispered urgently. My pulse quickened. I knew eavesdropping wasn't honorable. But something told me I needed to hear this. She's not going to help. Alex said bitterly. Did you see how she just sat there, acting all superior with her tech money while we're drowning? Patience, my father replied. We have another option. A chill ran through me. Another option? I found investment documents in her cloud storage when she used our Wi-Fi last month. He continued. She's hiding money in some company called Divine Investments. My LLC. They'd snooped through my files, probably syncing my cloud storage without my knowledge. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palm as I tried to control my breathing. She's been squirreling away money there instead of helping her family. My father spat, his voice thick with resentment. Then came my mother's voice, cold and sharp. I raised a snake. The words stung, but it was Alex's next statement that turned my blood to ice. We'll give her one more chance to help voluntarily, he said. If not, I'll remind her about that time in college when she took money from Dad's business account for tuition. She thinks we never knew, but we have proof. I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing aloud. The money they were referring to? I had borrowed it with my father's permission when their check for my tuition bounced. I'd even paid it back, with interest. I had the emails to prove it. But they weren't done. If that doesn't work, Alex continued, his voice dripping with malice. We could always reach out to her company's HR department. Maybe raise some concerns about her mental stability. Suggest she's been using company resources for personal projects. That would get their attention. I nearly gasped. My own family was plotting to destroy my career. The career they'd always mocked. The career that had secretly kept them in their home all these years. I forced myself to step back quietly, returning to the bathroom before flushing the toilet for show. I had heard enough. Walking back into the dining room, I found them all sitting there, masks firmly in place. My mother smiled sweetly. Lena, dear, have you given any thought to helping us with the mortgage? I met her gaze steadily. I had my answer now. Actually, I said, my voice calm, unreadable. You'll have my decision in about 8 days. 8 days, the time left before their mortgage payment bounced and Divine Investments exercised its ownership rights. Alex frowned. Why so specific? I smiled, pushing back my chair. Just need to check some things with my financial advisor. You understand, right? Being careful with money is just good business sense. As I walked out the door, I made a silent vow. They had played their hand. Now, it was my turn. The morning of the deadline arrived with an eerie stillness. I sat at my desk, staring at my laptop screen, watching the minutes tick by. 8:59 a.m. In one more minute, everything would change. At exactly 9 a.m., Divine Investments' automated system sent the default notice. My family had officially missed their mortgage payment. The house was now mine. I exhaled slowly, waiting. It took only 12 minutes for my phone to ring. My mother. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then I answered, keeping my voice neutral. Hello? Lena. Her voice was frantic, breathless, almost hysterical. Something's wrong with the mortgage. The bank is saying we've defaulted. But that's impossible. We need your help, right now. I closed my eyes for a brief moment, savoring the irony. All these years, I had silently paid their debts while they mocked me behind my back. They had called me a burden, a joke, and now, they were begging me for help. I leaned back in my chair. Actually, Mom, Divine Investments isn't a bank. Silence. What do you mean? She stammered. I let the weight of my words settle. Divine Investments is my company. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Then came my father's voice. Cold and demanding. What kind of game are you playing? Lena? No game, I said smoothly. For the past 4 years, I've been covering the bulk of your mortgage while you all sat around that kitchen table, laughing about how little I contribute. I've paid over $267 to keep you in that house. And you didn't even realize it. I let that sink in before delivering the final blow. And now, because you failed to make your payment, the house belongs to me. A strangled sound came from my mother, somewhere between a gasp and a sob. That's not possible. This can't be happening. Oh, but it is, I said, flipping through the legal documents in front of me. You signed the agreement. Dad, you didn't bother to read the fine print. Did you? The purchase option clause states that if you default, ownership transfers immediately. My father erupted in rage. You conniving little. Careful. I cut him off, my voice deadly calm. Is that any way to speak to your landlord? Another heavy silence. I could almost hear my mother's panicked breathing. You wouldn't do this to your own family. Wouldn't I? I said, my voice void of sympathy. Families should respect each other. Not plot to blackmail. Not steal. Not tear someone down while living off their money. I paused. So tell me, Mom, Dad, where was my family when I needed them? I could hear Alex in the background, cursing under his breath. They had lost. They knew it. You have 30 days to vacate. I continued, or I start eviction proceedings. Then, before they could beg, scream, or threaten, I hung up. 3 months later, I stood in the middle of what used to be my family's house. Now, it was just a hollow shell. The furniture was gone, the walls stripped bare, the echoes of my childhood memories fading into silence. They were finally gone. After weeks of rage-filled messages, desperate voicemails, and empty threats, my parents had finally accepted the truth. They had lost everything. I had won. As I walked through the empty rooms, I could almost hear their voices from that fateful night, the night they sat around this very kitchen table, tearing me down, laughing at my expense. The kitchen table was gone now. So was their power over me. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. A text from my uncle Jason. It's done. They signed the last of the paperwork. They're officially out. You did it, Lena. I smiled, a slow, quiet satisfaction blooming in my chest. For the first time in years, I felt free. I walked to the front door, pausing for one last look. No regrets, no second thoughts, just the simple, irrefutable truth. I was done being their puppet. As I stepped outside, I spotted a familiar face leaning against a car. Jason. He waved, his expression unreadable. How does it feel? I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Like I can finally breathe. Jason nodded, watching me carefully. They're still telling the family you ruined them. I shrugged. Let them talk. Because here's the thing about consequences, they always catch up to you. And my family? They finally got what they deserved. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Although today's story may make people feel sad, I hope it will help people reflect on family relationships. If you have any thoughts or comments, please share them below the video. See you in the next videos.